Hello friends. So before we get started on our new lesson, I just want to kind of go over the agenda and explain what we're going to be doing for the next few days. So about day 1 and 2, we're going to create some prints and we're going to learn about a new fun technique using jelly plates, and we're going to use a bunch of different tools to create fun patterns for our prints. And then day 3, we're going to learn a little bit about Chilean Arpilleras and about the country of Chile. And then day 4 and 5, we're going to create our own Chilean Arpillera inspired landscape collages, and we're going to do that by using the prints we made on day 1 and 2.
Hi friends, today we're going to do the printmaking demo. So we have our jelly plate and our brayer, and the first thing we're going to do is roll out our paint. So I'm going to go with blue first. So you open up the plate, you just put a little bit in a line on the plate. A little goes a long way, you don't need a lot. And then with the brayer, you're just gonna roll some out, and you wanna cover every part of the brayer. So roll it until you get a nice even layer on everything. Still need a little bit. Okay, that looks good. And then with the jelly plate, you're just gonna roll it on. You might need to do a couple layers just because we're using acrylic paint and not ink, so it's just a little bit thinner than the ink. Hi friends, I forgot my messy mat, so I laid it underneath just in case we get spills on it. It's totally okay. And so we have the paint on our jelly plate, and now we're gonna do a bunch of different textures. We have all these tools to create different textures. So maybe with like a paintbrush, you just wanna paint some of this away, or with this little sponge, you could make little squares. I don't know if you guys can see that, but just little squares everywhere. And then if we take our first little paper, you just place it on the jelly mat. Try not to move it once you place it down. Put some pressure on it. Make sure you get all that. And then when you peel it off, you'll have your first print. Okay, so I cleared off my jelly plate because I'm done with the blue, and we're just gonna go in with a different color. You can do as many blueprints as you want, it's really up to you. So I'm just gonna go in with my green, do the same thing I did with my blue. Take a little bit and then just roll it. Make sure I get the whole surface on the brayer covered. Okay. And then just roll it on to the jelly plate. Make sure it's even. And then we can go in with a different tool to make different textures, like this feather if we want to just stamp it on, smooth it out. And then there's a little feathered texture, or we have a sponge here with different textures on each side. This one's kind of rougher, so maybe you could do some swirls. Yeah, that's cool. And let's go ahead and print this one. Let's do it on orange, because why not? So make sure you don't move your paper once you put it onto the plate, because then you don't want to ruin your print. Really smooth it out. Make sure you get every little corner, and then pull off. You might have to hold down your jelly plate. And look how cool this texture is. And then just place it to the side. And let's go ahead and let's do another green one. And do some more. Alrighty, so for this one, I just used some extra cardboard that I had, and I cut out a design. I'll show you guys how I did that. So you take your extra cardboard and then you just cut a little square out, or rectangle, whichever one. And then on one side you could do a swirly if you wanted to, or zigzag like I have in the other one. Whichever design you want, it's up to you. And then you take that and you can just squiggle out a different design, like so. And let's see how this one turned out. We can put it on a red one. Flatten it out, smooth it out. And then be careful. Whenever you bring it, pull it back out, and look at that cool design you made. Okay, so I cleared off my jelly plate again, and I went ahead and rolled out some red. And let's roll it onto the jelly plate. A good even layer, make sure you get every little corner. Okay, and then let's go ahead and do the other side of the sponge. So we could just stamp it or rub it like we did the other one. That one's cool. And I'm gonna go in with one of my smaller pieces, just for fun. We could use it for a smaller piece of the collage. Let's see how this one turned out. Cool. And sometimes if you're lucky, you can go in and use the same print twice. It might be a little bit kind of clearer, more translucent than the other one, but that's okay. And you have an interesting design on that one. I went ahead and put another layer of red on my jelly plate, and I'm gonna go in with this palette knife and kind of go in with some designs, maybe some cross hatching, whichever you want. And then I'm also gonna go in with this Q-tip and maybe make some little dots, some swirls, maybe another swirly line, maybe a couple straight lines. Whichever design you want. Let's go ahead and see what this one looks like. That one was fun. Okay, so I went ahead and put another color, yellow, onto my jelly plate and rolled it out. And another fun thing is getting another piece of cardboard and ripping just the first layer off and seeing if this has a little cool design, which is cool. This is a thicker cardboard too, so it's easier. And we could do the same thing we did with the other cardboard and make a fun little design, maybe a swirl and a little pokey one. Okay, and we'll see how this one turns out. Also fun, and we could even go over it this way. For another technique, you can cut up a paper bag and maybe crinkle it and just stamp it and get the different textures that way. Maybe even swirl some, or like make a line. Whatever you prefer. You're the artist, so you do whatever you want to do. And let's see how this one turned out. Maybe we can do like a side one. Fun. And since there's still a little bit of paint left, let's see if we can get another print from it. Let's maybe get the bottom half. For the last technique, this one's fun. So you can have one layer of color down and you can go in with a separate color on top with a paintbrush and paint on a design, whichever one. You could do little circles, maybe an X, another squiggle. And if you take the back side of your paintbrush, you can even go in and combine it more. Make it super crazy and super fun. And let's see how this one turned out. It's okay if you get some paint on the back, because it's just the back. So cool with 2 colors. And you can maybe, let's see if we can do another print. Yes, because there's more paint on it, because there's 2 colors, there's even a better second print. Okay, since we are working in pairs for this, when your partner is using the jelly plate, this is another thing that you can be doing to make textured prints. So, you can get your paintbrush and just paint straight onto your paper in cool designs, maybe like some more squiggles. Maybe even get like, you could even use this little stamping tool or a sponge, but use it as a stamp and stamp on little squares. You can do as many colors as you want, as little color as you want, just as long as you have some sort of texture and pattern on your paper. So I think that's good for my first one. And then maybe going in with a blue paper, I can use this sponge. So if I take the sponge and I grab a little bit of paint on it, I could go in and, ooh, that's cool, and stamp it. It's very textured, very kind of like 3D. Maybe on the other side, I can bring in a red color. And then stamp red. And have that for one pattern. And then another technique, you can put paint down either with the sponge or the paintbrush, whatever you want to do. Maybe just like scoop it on there. I'll maybe bring some in with the paintbrush as well. Maybe get like some nice kind of like globs on there so it's thick. And then we can use the tools that we made before to make more designs and more patterns in it. Maybe bring some more blue. We could even, since I have a little bit extra yellow, I can stamp the yellow on top. Just have some crazy designs and patterns.
Today we're going to continue on our project that we started a couple days ago with the printmaking, but first we're going to learn a little bit about Chile and Chilean Arpilleras. So where is Chile? Chile is a country in the continent of South America. It is long and narrow, and it has a long coastline along the Pacific Ocean. And you can see it here in this little map. Here's the orangey, like yellow country that's highlighted. And it's a country that is full of mountain ranges such as the Andes Mountains and the Chilean Coast Range Mountains. And the people of Chile speak Spanish and are known as Chileans. So what are arpilleras? Arpilleras, or burlap in Spanish, are skillfully stitched works of art. The colorful patchwork pictures are known as applique because they are pieces of fabric applied and stitched by hand. These pieces were created by women artists in Chile and Peru. And here at the bottom are a couple examples of Chilean arpilleras that were made. So how did arpilleras come to be? The women of Chile began creating arpilleras several years ago in the 70s and 80s during the military dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. Many men had to leave their families, and the women had to find a new way to make money to support their family. So they used leftover material and recycled materials to make art to do just that. which are the Arpilleras. And here you can see them making them and sewing them together. So there are stories behind the Arpilleras, and art that tells a story is called a narrative. The Chilean Arpilleras are narratives of the hardships and the sorrows of the Chilean women. They tell their stories through these stitched works of art. However, not Arpilleras tell sad stories. Today, many Arpilleras are landscape pieces and they tell happier stories. So here at the bottom left is an example of one of the sadder stories that the Arpilleras tell, made during the 70s and 80s. And you can see the military regime. And on the right is an example of an Arpillera that is made more recently, and it's a happy landscape piece with lots of flowers. Okay, so now we are going to make our own Chilean Arpilleras. For the next few classes, we're going to work on making our own Chilean landscape collages inspired by the Arpilleras. We're going to use the printed paper that we created the last couple classes and make a paper collage with them of our very own Chilean landscape pieces. And once we're done with making the actual collages, remember when we were just talking about the Arpilleras, that they would tell the story of, or like a narrative of the Chilean women and their families and what they were going through during that time. So at the end, when you finish making your own Chilean landscape collages, I want you guys to come up with like a short story, just a few sentences, nothing too long. I want you to write it down and come up with a story for your landscapes. Okay, so let's get started.
Hey guys, so today we're going to start on making our Chilean Arpillera inspired landscape collages. So we're going to start with a square piece of colored paper of your choice. I chose yellow. This is going to be our background color. And we have all of our prints that we made from the last couple classes collected here. And we're going to be using those for our paper collage. So we have all our papers, and we're going to start with creating the mountains, because as we saw in the Chilean landscape and in all the Arpillera examples that we looked at, they have lots of mountains, such as the Andes Mountains. So we're going to create mountains to include in our collage. So I'm going to go through, and you're just going to pick some of the prints that you like and that you want to include. I'm going to use this one. And you're just going to kind of rip it however you want to make it look like mountains or hills. And we're just going to do like one at a time. So I'm going to start with that one. And that's going to be our back mountain range, because we're going to have several ranges of mountains. So there's the first one. And then I'll pick out my second print. Just find ones that you like. Let's go with this one. And again, you're just going to kind of rip it however you want to make it look like mountains. And it doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. So I'm just going to lay this out first and decide on a composition before I go ahead and glue it down. So there's my second layer, and you can always rearrange these after you rip them if you want to. Okay. Going to add another layer. You guys can make however many layers or ranges of mountains as you want, but I want you to make at least 3 and include at least 3 layers in your landscape collage. There we go. I think I might, let's go to the smaller paper. And I'm going to look through those and create smaller mountains on the sides. I like this one. And rip the side a little bit too, a little more. And you can always trim it off later if you need to. You can trim off the excess. So I think I'm going to start with that. And then I'm going to go ahead and start gluing some of these down where I want them. So you're just going to take your glue And you're just gonna flip your piece of paper over, and you're just gonna add a few dots. You don't want too much along the edge. If you add too much glue, it'll make your paper wet and wrinkly, so we don't want that. So you just need enough to get it to stick down, okay? And then you're gonna flip it back over, and you're gonna decide where you want it. I'm gonna put mine about there. And then you're just gonna press it and gently smooth it out so that the glue sticks. Okay, remember we're gonna be making the mountains from the top down. So this space here is gonna act as my sky. So I wanna leave that blank. And I'm just gonna continue gluing down my mountains that I have. Just make sure you find out where you want to glue them before you place it down. Then again, just gently press it and smooth it out. And just continue doing that. Okay. Now I have this piece of paper and I went for my next mountain range, and it's too long. So once you figure out where you want that, I'm going to hold it in place, flip it over, and I'm just going to trim it along the edge of my background paper. And then I'm going to glue that on just like the others. Flip it over and lay it down. There we go. And then I remember I said I wanted to add these to the side too. So I'm just gonna figure out wherever I wanna put those. I think I'm gonna put it here, but I wanna rip this a little bit more just because I don't like how it looks. There we go. And then I'm just gonna kind of guesstimate with trimming this, just because it's a little big. So I want it to be a little bit smaller. There we go. I think I like that. I'm gonna go ahead and glue that one down. And I think I want one more like little hill or mountain here on this corner like I added here to little balance out the composition a little bit more. So I'm just gonna look through some of these. I'm going to pick one that I like, that I think would look good in that corner. I think I'm going to go with this one. And again, you're just gonna kind of rip it however you want. I don't like how that turned out, so I'm gonna look at this other piece first. I'm just gonna use that one. There we go. I like how that one turned out. So again, just flip it over, add the glue, and then press it down. And now that we have all of the mountains included in our Chilean landscapes, we can add more decorations and details, just like in the Arpilleras. So the Arpilleras had lots of landscapes, and they had a sky, so we can decorate our sky a little bit maybe. We could add a sun. So let me find a piece of paper that I think would be good for the sun. I think I'm going to use this one. I'm just going to try to rip a circle with this paper. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just going to rip up some of the sharper corners. I want it to be a bit bigger, so I'm going to try that again. Or if you want, instead of ripping it, you can use a pair of scissors and you can cut it out. And I'm going to kind of cut mine around the spiral design here because I really like that. Just kind of cut a circle. I'm going to use that as my sun. So I'm going to go ahead and decide where I want that and glue that down. And I think I also want to include some clouds in my landscape collage. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our plate or palette and some white paint, just squeeze a little bit onto there. And we're going to use some of those sponges we used the last couple of classes in our printmaking to make clouds. I think I'm going to try to use this one. Just dip it in your white paint. And then just kind of dab it on to your paper, wherever you want, to make cloud shapes. I'm going to add one here. I'm going to overlap the sun a little bit. Try not to go over your mountains though. Keep it in the sky. Here we go. Okay, and then some other common elements in the Arpilleras or Chilean landscapes are flowers, and they also included lots of houses and people. So let's make a little house to add in our mountains. So again, you're just gonna pick one of the printed papers that you like. And I'm just gonna cut out like a square or a rectangle shape here. Get it to the size you want. If you can, kind of lift up the edge of one of those mountains that you glued down just a little bit if you can. If you can't, don't worry about it, it'll still look great. But I want to add that in there. And then now I'm going to make a roof for it. So we're going to make like a trapezoid shape. So first I'm going to start by cutting out a rectangle. And then you're going to, it needs to be a bit thinner. You're going to start from one corner, just go in, and you're going to cut a triangle off the top corner for both sides. Just like that. And then you can lay it on top, and it looks like a little house. So we'll go ahead and glue both of those pieces down. You need to add a couple dots of glue to the back of the house so it stays. Gently press it down. Make sure you get all the corners. Now for the roof. Now remember, we're trying to create a sense of space or perspective in these pieces. So we want to make sure that the roof layers on top of the house. And that's also why we layered the house behind one of those layers of the mountains and not just sitting on top of all of them. And then you can also use a marker to go in, and you can draw a little door on your house and maybe some little windows. Try not to overlap that mountain too much. There we go. You can add however many houses you want. You can add people. I'm going to add some flowers now because that was very common in the Chilean Arpilleras. So I'm going to squirt some green paint onto my palette. And we're just going to take a scrap of cardboard like we used in our prints, and I'm going to just fold it in half like that. We're going to use this edge here. We're going to dip it, dab it in the green paint just lightly. Make sure that edge is covered in green paint, and we're just going to gently place it onto the paper wherever we want the flowers to create the stem of our flowers. So I'm just going to create a few stems there, and we'll go back in a minute and add the flowers themselves. I think I just want one more flower right there. Okay, so we have our flowers, or our flower stems, so now we're going to create the actual flowers themselves. I think I'm going to use red for the flowers, so again, just squirt a little bit of red paint onto your palette. This time we're going to use a Q-tip, which we also used in our printmaking, and you're just going to dab it in the red paint, dab the tip of it in the red paint, and then you're just going to dab it onto your paper, several circles in the shape of a flower. And then we can go back in and add a center for the flowers later. So we're just going to dab, dab, dab. All you have to do is gently press down. You don't have to move the Q-tip at all. Just press, lift, press, lift, press, lift. You're kind of making a circle shape with the Q-tips. And they kind of look like a flower. So we have that, and now I'm going to add the centers of the flowers. I'm going to make them blue. Again, you're just going to do the same thing you did with creating the petals for the flowers, except I'm going to use the other end, use the clean end of your Q-tip. Go ahead and dip it in your paint, and then dab it right into the center. Right into the center. And we have some flowers. So you can create however many flowers you want, or however many colors you want. And I think I also want to add an animal to my landscape collage because lots of the Arpilleras had animals. And a very common animal that was in the Arpilleras are llamas or alpacas because they are native to Chile and Peru. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of white paper. I'm going to set my collage aside for a minute. I'm just going to get a pen. And I'm kind of going to try to draw the outline of a llama. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is what I'm just going to make mine look like. And if you mess up, that's okay. You can always start over, so maybe I don't like that one. I think I want him to have a longer neck. So I'm just going to draw another one. Draw the neck, his ears, and there you go. You can draw however many of those you want. Okay, so I went ahead and drew and cut out those little llamas that I made, and don't worry about cutting right on the line because I just flipped them over and then you don't have the drawing anymore. So I cut out 2 because I wanted to include 2 in my landscape. So I think I also want to add a little blanket or like a little shawl that you see on a lot of them. If you look at the Arpilleras, don't worry, we're gonna have tons of examples of the Chilean Arpilleras for you to look at while you're making your collages, so you can be inspired by them and kind of use some of the different ideas from there. So I just cut out a tiny little rectangle that I'm going to glue onto the back of my little llama. So you really just need like one little dot of glue. I'm just gonna kind of pick them up. I'm just gonna glue it right on the back like that. So we have like a little shawl or a little blanket. If you look at the examples of the Arpilleras, you can see that. And I'm gonna get another color. And I'm gonna do the same thing for my other llama. Just cut out a tiny little square, a little rectangle, a little dot of glue. I'm just gonna glue it on his back. Here we go. And I want to give them a face. So again, just use like your little pen or a marker. I'm just going to draw an eye and a little mouth. And the same on this one. And then I'm going to take them. I'm going to decide where I want to put them. I think I want to put one down here at the bottom. And I also want to add one up here in the mountains somewhere. I think I'm going to put him right there next to the house. So I'm going to flip him over, add a couple dots of glue, flip him over again, and just gently press down where I want him. I'm going to do the same thing for the other one. And I think that's all I'm going to add to my collage landscape. You guys can add whatever you want, as long as it's inspired by the Chilean Arpilleras or a Chilean landscape. And that's it. I hope you guys have fun making these.